This is I Have No Title and I Must Podcast, the show where we discuss any and all aspects of pop culture that is on our mind at our time. I am your host, Tyler.
And Chris.
And with the release of his newest movie, Asteroid City, and an upcoming Netflix project, we figured this is as good a time as any to discuss Wes Anderson. For people that's maybe not familiar with Wes Anderson, where do you think they should start?
Where should we start? With Wes Anderson. Then that's the thing too, is he's a pretty divisive auteur. You might hate him. It might just be your next favorite director and groups of films. I always tell people to start with the Royal Tenenbaums. Simple as that. I think it's his most him yet down-to-earth film.
Yeah, that's definitely seems to be where he starts to really develop his style of stuff.
Before he goes out of control.
Yes.
But I'll get back to that. Don't judge me on that. Don't click away. Hit like if you do. But don't think that this is one of my favorite film directors. Look, there's a reason why instead of doing a Barbenheimer episode, we're doing a Wes Anderson episode instead. Go see Asteroid City. But we're not talking about Asteroid City today. That'll be depending on the order of when you see this. We're going to be doing 2 separate shows devoted to Asteroid City by itself.
Yeah, so keep an eye out for that. Let's talk about his style, because it is definitely unique. Like, if you've seen one Wes Anderson movie, you can be shown any other Wes Anderson movie and immediately know that's his.
Yes, it might take you longer with Bottle Rocket, but that's the only one that was his first feature.
But how would you even describe it? I've heard some people call it eccentric.
Eccentric. Yes, I've written a few things down. Also, just know it takes one to know one. So it's the autistic's paradise, or maybe a paradox, but we'll get back to that, hopefully. There's organizations, lists, mentors, unattainable love interests. Is it just this? Is it just a collection of center frame shots, pastel color palettes, compass compositions, and deadpan dialogue delivery? No, that's the thing, is I think a lot of people want to maintain that he's kind of one note, style over substance, and it's not that. You're gonna know it's him, but don't think that it's just this, especially once he gets out of control. He's off the leash now, guys.
To me, a lot of his stuff has like this uncanny, whimsical feature to it.
For sure.
Because the special effects that he does a lot of times is stop motion or looks like a high-end play.
Yeah, there's a lot of CGI. Well, I say a lot. In his more recent films, there's some CGI, but you'd never know that it's CGI. It's meant to be so well hidden that you might think it's stop motion.
Another thing that you notice a lot in Wes Anderson's films that he uses is a technique called knolling. And for people that's not familiar with that term, it's essentially like an organization method where everything is laid out at right angles.
Yeah.
And this was originally for people working on like models or projects where all their equipment and tools were laid out so they could see it clearly and know where everything is. Wes Anderson uses this to set scenes. Like everything is kind of crisp at angles and almost like a dollhouse. And some of his long shots more reinforce this, where things are actually laid out like you're looking at a dollhouse.
Yeah, the scenes are meant to look extremely flat, which can be off-putting to a person because it doesn't look realistic. Like most films go to try and immerse you in the film as realistically as possible, whereas Wes is doing the opposite. He wants you to know you're watching a film at all times, whether it's meant to feel like you're immersed in a book or a play or a magazine in some cases, one case in particular.
I feel that he has done this very well though, because it's not like, oh, this is like so low budget that it's clearly a prop and you're just taken out of the movie. No, it's like a high-end fake. Very much a stylized choice other than this is what we had.
To touch on your whimsy comment, it's like also everything seems really, on the surface, everything seems really innocent and through this like childlike wonder. Some of the films very specifically. But there's so much horror going on just underneath. You know, you're not safe in these films. You, the weirdo, you look at the veneer of this and think you're going to be safe. at least for the running time of these films. But they're not children's films. No one is really safe. There's real world horrific things happening. Your best friend could get eaten by a wild animal. Your wife and child might die. Your tail could get blown off, or your 84-year-old consort could die unexpectedly. But in that case, he did inherit a large sum of money. So anyway, I digress. But it's through this lens that everything being completely organized, the safe and warm and friendly color palettes, makes you feel at home.
Yeah, there's a joke going around right now that is, why are movies today so dark? Just like their color, not necessarily content. And the joke is that, oh, it's because Wes Anderson stole all the color.
Yeah. There's also this, like on YouTube and Instagram, there's these people have AI generated all these different films as if, it's like a still framed images of the characters and scenes from movies if Wes Anderson had directed them, which isn't necessarily, in some cases, accurate. Some of them, maybe. And I think that's one of those things that make people think he's so quirky that it's not for them. Give Royal Tenenbaums a try. It may not be. It might be so stilted that it's not for you. But he's been one of my favorite directors for the better part of 20 years now. Oh, 25, I guess. I forget how old I am sometimes. Tyler didn't give me a calendar here in the undisclosed location that I'm being held prisoner in the bunker. So I'm only guessing it's the year 2016. I hope I'm right. There's an election coming up. I hope that goes well.
For me, I'm not as familiar with Wes Anderson. I think the first movie I seen was Grand Budapest Hotel when it first came out. And then I seen Bottle Rocket and Fantastic Mr. Fox. And then only recently, within like the past week or so, have watched the rest of his
you did some hardcore cramming.
Yeah, it was a fun week though.
Did that cup your brain?
It's like it did.
I came in here into the room where we record in, and everything's much cleaner, and there's organized groupings of alcohols, and there's a grocery list on the refrigerator. Those weren't there before. Also, you're wearing a beige suit. I didn't think you owned a beige suit, but it turns out you do. So
who knows what you find in the depths of your closet when you actually clean it. So anyway, since I said that my first movie was Grand Budapest, let's go into what is your favorite of the Wes Anderson movies?
So I already said I recommend people start with the Royal Tenenbaums. I score this in two categories. My personal favorite is the Grand Budapest, and I feel his best film is the Royal Tenenbaums, as like it's a larger ensemble, like with main characters, which is a lot of balls in the air to juggle and get just right. And I feel like he did. I just have a personal attachment to the Grand Budapest. Thing is, I didn't really realize until the last year or so that so many people liked it. A lot of people say that's their favorite. Yeah. I didn't know.
I think it's my favorite also, and I think that is like his most awarded film.
It for sure is, and it was, I think, maybe his biggest moneymaker. And I do just want to say a lot of the other two runners up, not for me, but for people in general. If you're listening to this still and you haven't looked into Wes Anderson, you're thinking about it, I think The Fantastic Mr. Fox might be a good place to start.
Especially if you have like younger kids.
Yeah, it's the one that's like extremely kid-friendly.
I really enjoyed that one, and I almost want to steal from that movie when we have to do our censors, because the way they did it in the movie was just fantastic.
Yeah, that's what
it adds to the like the hilarity of it.
We could record us saying cuss, and then there's also
I wanted to have
George Clooney's voice,
but I can't afford George Clooney.
Or it's only 1 second though. I think you have to do 15 seconds before it technically counts as. But would that pile up? Yeah. But it's only 1 second at a time.
Possibility. Either way, if we had to hire George Clooney for 1 second, I still don't think that's in the budget.
Or Bill Murray.
Yeah.
Bill Murray might do it.
Bill Murray might do it just to be like, no one's going to believe you anyway.
Yeah. So there you go. But he would steal our French fries.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. But yeah, I think.
Yeah,
Grand
go ahead.
Budapest is also my favorite. It's definitely my first introduction. Although I have to say my favorite line comes from Life Aquatic. And the setup is Bill Murray's character is like, he used to be like this rock star marine documentarian, but now he's like struggling to get funding, and they finally agree to give him so much money, but he has to take this like finance broker along with him to make sure everything's been handled correctly.
The stooge.
Yeah. And at some point, they go to his rival's ship and steal all of his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then through a series of events, the finance broker gets kidnapped. And it turns out that Bill Murray's rival, played by Jeff Goldblum, is also kidnapped. And so when they go to rescue the finance broker, they end up rescuing him also. And the scene cuts to, they're all standing around. The finance broker and Jeff Goldblum are drinking an espresso. And Jeff Goldblum looks at the logo on the side of it. He's like, is that my espresso machine? And the finance broker just goes, yeah, we're cussing. Stole it, man.
He's part of the team now.
And that just took me so off guard and made me laugh so hard after watching that. That is definitely the best line.
Reverse Stockholm Syndrome. Maybe the only time we've ever seen that. It's all of the movies feature, they have some sort of outcast or an oddball or an orphan or a flawed genius. And all of the films, I think all of them, you could make this argument because it's by degrees anyway. All of the characters have some form of baggage, all of the main characters that we're focusing on. The point for them, their journey involves them letting go of this baggage, either metaphorically or that one time literally, which involved both. Sometimes it's just a midlife crisis. That's kind of Fox's deal in the Fantastic Mr. Fox. I almost said The Incredible Mr. Fox. Would I have said The Incredible Mr. Limpet? I'll never know. That's worth a like. If you haven't hit the like button and you know that reference, come on, like, leave a comment. And did I mispronounce it? You have to correct me. So some of the characters are always, they seem like they're in between one thing and another. There's, when you see them, they're struggling. Sometimes they're rebellious to the point of self-destructive, like the Fantastic Mr. Fox, or Jason Schwartzman's character from Rushmore, or just generally Jason Schwartzman's character in most things. I almost think he's getting typecast for that, but he's such an amazing actor. He transcends that. Oh, also, that's another thing we haven't mentioned yet. He likes to use a lot of the same actors.
Yes, and I see why a lot of them come back, too. I recently read a quote from Bryan Cranston, who was in Asteroid City, and I think this is the first time Bryan Cranston's been in Wes Anderson's movie.
I think so, yeah.
But he said the way Wes Anderson does things behind the scenes is so very different from everything else. There's no trailers, there's no makeup rooms. It's everybody stays at the same hotel, everybody has dinner together, everybody gets ready and just shows up on set and hangs out. And if you're needed, you're called. If not, you just hang out with everybody. Mm. Instead of, all right, you be here at this time, we got this shot list, you got your dressing room, you go here and you wait for us to call you, and like all this just corporate nonsense. It's just like hey guys, we're going to hang out and make a movie.
Like I said, takes one to know one. It's as if he is one of the characters in his films that does things his way and refuses to be told otherwise. These aren't big blockbusters. They don't make a lot of money. They're made for scale. What is in the industry is called scale. These huge name actors show up for it because they know they're going to make an amazing piece of art. They're not doing it for, there's a lot of auteurs that a lot of really big name actors will show up for, even if they don't have good things to say about them afterward. If they're controversial figures, an actor knows where to go. If they want to do some good acting, if they want to be seen for something that maybe it doesn't even win an award. That might not be the point. The point might be just to make an amazing work of art that will stand the test of time and be timeless. Because a lot of these films, even though they might be set in some other time, not the present, he's never done a outright sci-fi film or a futuristic film. We're waiting for that, but they're never kind of specific. It's always some of the landmarks are fictional. A lot of everything is fictional, even if it's based on some real world event.
And that kind of adds to that whimsical, fantastical feeling of his movies.
Yes, that for sure. I like to think of, like there's a lot of dark and gritty films out there right now. People pushing for an extreme realism to the point of showing everyday mental illness, the horrors of being out on the street trying to get a job, like Joker. I haven't seen Oppenheimer yet, but I like Neil deGrasse Tyson's take on what he said about Vincent van Gogh. When he said, he doesn't paint realistically. And he said this in front of an audience, and he had a whole big spiel about it. I'm not going to attempt to quote him verbatim, so this is just paraphrasing. But he ripped off his shirt, and underneath he had like this Starry Night, like printed shirt, like all underneath, and said, if you want something that looks precisely real, we invented a camera. If you want to have a memory that is exactly the way it was, just take a picture. Look at a picture. It's as simple as that. But if you want to feel something, if you want to have some emotion behind your artwork, you don't want it to look precisely real. You want there to be something you can't quantify. And as a scientist, that really hit home for me. Not me being the scientist, him, coming from a scientist. You never see scientists talking about art. So that was so compelling to me. And that's exactly how I feel about Wes Anderson. I pick on Scorsese a lot, and I don't mean to. I don't want anybody who, if you're a repeat viewer, if you're subscribed and you keep coming back, I don't want you to think I hate Scorsese. He just said some things that I don't agree with, like a lot about cinema. I don't think he's the master and commander of all of cinema. But that's why I keep coming back to Wes Anderson, because I know he's going to take me to a place that I'm going to be ever present of. These films are designed to be watched again and again, either to be analyzed or to just take you out of your day, your dreary, miserable, cussing life, and just watch somebody else's interesting woes for a minute. They're not necessarily like, it's like, to a lavender and pink color palette, you might see somebody get like stabbed in the chest. These things happen, but it's so much fun.
Yeah, they almost have a wholesomeness to them, even the darker moments.
For sure. Yeah, because it feels, there's something I can't put my finger on. It's elusive, but it's the world of it. It seems like everything's going to be okay, even if it isn't okay right now. There's friendships that are forged. People seem extremely loyal in these films. Even there's duplicity in this as well. There are people who, they're being dishonest and lying to you. But most of the time, the confessions, when they come easily. And that comes with a moment of self-recognition. They finally see themselves, maybe for the first time. I'm thinking of Royal Tenenbaum when I say this. And Steve Zissou from The Life Aquatic, he was extremely manipulative with almost every person he meets, but they're coming to the end of his career, maybe to the end of his life, maybe to the restart of his career, going into the end of his life. He comes to terms with a lot of it and comes clean with a lot of people. And it's a really cathartic moment for him and us, the viewer.
Yeah, that's represented in most of his films. We kind of get that in The Darjeeling Limited and even in Bottle Rocket. In his earliest film, there's a little bit in there. And something else I want to talk about, Bottle Rocket. That is his first film, which he collaborated with Owen Wilson in writing that, as I think he does a lot of his stuff. That movie is fairly simple. And I don't mean just simple compared to Wes Anderson, but just in general. That's a good movie to sit down with. It's very low budget, simple plot, but it is just a good watch. Just kind of like a little slice of life with these people, and it's a good hour and a half.
Yeah, it's one of those, like at the time especially, it fit into that like indie movie category where there was a lot of films coming out like that, and that's why it looks the way that it does. He hadn't yet digivolved into the ultimate version of Wes Anderson. There's stages in his career, and that was stage one. He if you want to lump Rushmore into that, he leaps forward into Rushmore. And Rushmore, we start with those curtains, like you're watching a play, and then those curtains pull back and here's the film. His agent really tried to talk him out of that, and he really said, no, you're not getting it. I don't think he was rude to him. From what I've read of the conversation, I don't see Wes Anderson being rude to anyone, but he did it nonetheless, and it's something maybe people weren't going to understand at the time, just like how throughout the Royal Tenenbaums we've seen pages of a book with actual dialogue in it. The chapter numbers were on at the time, and on up until Asteroid City, where we're shown it's a play, as if we're looking at the stage directions and as to whether or not there's going to be an intermission or how long it's going to play and how many scenes that are going to be in it. I gotta say, Wes Anderson's one of my favorite directors, and I love talking about Wes Anderson. When I find out that somebody likes Wes Anderson, usually their first thing they say is, "Oh my God, did you see the Fantastic Mr. Fox?" Which I will then say, yes, I've seen all of them. Half of them I've seen in the theater. But taking a look at it, analyzing it in this way, even though I know I've already said that I feel like they're almost meant to be, you get something out of these films. You get rewarded when you watch them more than once. If you can't, if there's something, I never get tired of watching the Royal Tenenbaums. I don't know why. It's one of those films. I usually watch it at least once a year, sometimes a little over that, and I can find something new in it every time. If you might blink at different points every time you watch a movie, if you think about that, and there's something that you may have missed every single time you watched it, and this time you're gonna catch it. There's always that possibility. I've already seen Asteroid City twice now. I know other reviewers I've watched have said they've already seen it 4 times, and I'm like, wait, in a weekend? That seems a bit much. I could understand if they need therapy after that. But yeah, they do feel homey. They do feel like going home. And that's part of why I don't like the staunch analyzation, like Wisecracks, Deep or Dumb. I enjoyed watching some of these things about them, but you also have to think, is this is the target demographic. It's for a more intelligent audience. Having said that, I don't necessarily enjoy picking these things apart. I really like, if we were sitting around and eating or having a drink, we could just loosely talk about it away from the microphone. I think that's what's more fun about him. Taking this thing that's kind of, when you're in that world, it feels super serious but also whimsical at the same time, and then just having fun with it and saying, man, what's going on in that guy's head?
We say as we simultaneously plan to do a deep dive on Asteroid City.
I was thinking about, and we already kind of did that. We started the conversation immediately after, you went with me when I saw it the second time, and we were talking about it on the way home, which gave me some pretty intense anxiety. Yes, that's one thing we haven't touched on yet is his music. And I don't think it's one thing that a lot of reviewers and people who look at the entirety of his career, there's so many other obvious aspects, the visuals and the way he shoots. And a lot of people don't talk about the music.
The music he chooses isn't always the music that I normally listen to, but it fits perfectly into every movie. He uses a lot of pop from 60s and 70s.
Yeah, a lot of Kinks.
Yeah.
He really loves the Kinks and some old Stones, but also the scores. If you're cleaning your house on a Sunday afternoon or lazing on a Sunday afternoon, find a Wes Anderson song playlist on YouTube. Put it on and tell me that's not a worthwhile day. But the scores, too. He got Mark Mothersbaugh to do The Life Aquatic, which was odd because it's mostly just these weird kind of beeps and bops that are extremely electronic new wave sounding. There's a reason for that. But it was so unexpected, combined with getting Sue George to cover a bunch of Ziggy era David Bowie songs in, I think, Portuguese. I forget. That's the one thing I didn't look up today. And it's so cussing. Works. It's just amazing. That guy does these acoustic songs, and a lot of them are featured him doing them diegetically, in the scene. And then I think they end on a slow motion shot in that film with Queen Bitch from Hunky Dory. But there's a lot of what sounds like just a string quartet playing here and there. He's all over the place with the music he'll use. And that, I think, is one of his greatest strengths. That is one thing. You can say that he's stayed kind of in a certain range, the pop songs he's used. But even then, in his last 3-4 films, he's kind of moved away from that, even. I mean, there was nothing that would have fit into the Grand Budapest and Asteroid City. There's a couple couple of originals composed specifically for that. So that, I think, people who want to discredit him or not give him enough credit on something, that's one thing that, even then on the surface, you might think, oh, well, he does the same thing all the time. But he doesn't at all.
No, he does have similar themes and styles, but it's all different.
It is. Yeah, every film. He's also been a trailblazer with using the different aspect ratios. Before, he went crazy with it on The French Dispatch, but before the hotel one, why did it just jump? I just
Grand
said
Budapest.
the Grand Budapest. Before that, it wasn't very common for directors to use the multiple framing shots of using different aspect ratios for effect. Not to say he was the first one ever, but to use it commonly. Now, a lot of people are using it kind of all the time. And not to say he was the first one, but he kind of pushed that into the forefront, and that's become another of his signature trademarks that he's done, I think, in every film since then. I can't remember if he did it in The Isle of Dogs. I would be surprised if it wasn't in there. So he's still adding to the things that he does that he is recognizably him for. Yeah. I think this guy is, I'm going to say, underrated. And I know that might sound like everybody knows who Wes Anderson is. He did that one X-Men movie. I didn't watch it, but I definitely saw the trailer for it on YouTube. That was him, right? Well, no, that's the one he didn't do. Those kids made a great looking trailer, but that wasn't actually him. Convincing though it may have been. No, you know who he is, but people are like, it's like with Tim Burton. Love Tim Burton or hate him. People say he's one note or style over substance. Something I've said at the beginning of this. And it's not true. And the only way you're going to know if you're listening to this, you must be a cinephile or you seriously have some issues. So be sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. Watch the films. Watch all of them. What's it going to do? Kill ya? If you went to see the Barbie film and Oppenheimer, you can at least go back and watch like 7 Wes Anderson films you didn't already see.
You don't have to do it in 1 week like I did, but...
No, that will obviously cuss up your brain.
But to also touch on me watching all those in 1 week, I can attest to what Chris said earlier about him enjoying to talk about Wes Anderson when he finds out that someone else likes Wes Anderson. Because when we first started talking about this, he showed up with the rest of the movies to fill in my collection that I did not own.
I actually had multiple copies of some of them.
Yes, he's just like, here, you can keep these. And then he's just like, oh, also, by the way, you're coming with me when I see this movie a second time. And then we went and watched Asteroid City.
You become part of an elite club that, like, when you find out, I mean, it's more than like, oh, you like AC/DC too? Bro, I don't just like AC/DC. You know, it's not like that. These are thick films. They're not what they appear to be. You know, I'm a big Marvel fan, but these two do not overlap. They're not the same thing. These are not actual books or comic books or plays portrayed on screen. They're dense, complex stories with a lot of characters that have serious mental issues that are attempting to just get through their days. I know I may have just described Joker. This ain't Joker. If you look at the complexity of how the shot's composed, everything in the background is meticulously placed and laid. Everything in the shot that isn't visible is meticulously laid out, organized, and composed so that it can be ready for the next shot.
I want to nerd out on that a little bit because there's one shot in particular. It's not even a spoiler from French Dispatch, but the technique he uses to film this, you wouldn't even know it unless you just know. But he uses the effect of split screen to composite this shot, but he uses 15 splits on this screen so that he can compile all these to get the perfect take in this one scene. And it is fantastic.
What's the scene?
It's just a shot of the street, 2 buildings on the side, a walkway down the middle, and another building in the back.
Oh, yeah. Is it the morning shot?
I think so. Where people start coming out and
yeah.
get their stuff ready. There's water coming out of the drain.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the hidden CGI that I was talking about. There's an element of that when the artist, I forget his name, from The French Dispatch, when he's in, I took some screenshots of this. I'm showing him my phone right now. When he's in the wheelchair and his muse slash model, she uses her baton to knock him down and he goes flying. When the wheelchair explodes behind it, they used green screen and like several people in green screen suits holding the pieces of the wheelchair, making it fly around. That's actually, I mean, I just love practical effects and the stop motion. Oh, also this is all over the place. So I've said he's off the leash now, right? He's off the leash. He's going crazy, making movies about magazines, changing aspect ratio and whether or not you see color or black and white every other shot. And in Asteroid City, the forbidden movie that we're going to really go into later, so we're trying to talk as little about it as possible now, but with these why can I not concentrate? Maybe this isn't for people. Maybe this is a PSA. The like what are you watching, son? Wes Anderson. How could you? I learned it from you, Dad. Because it might just cuss up your brain.
I think this is more of a PSA on not being over caffeinated and recording too early.
Cuss. That did happen to me. There's the other time. It's my cussing job. It was this or record on Friday and you have to spend the rest of the day editing and getting it out. And I thought at least give you most of the week. We're recording on Tuesday. It is Tuesday, right? Thank God, but it is early. So The French Dispatch, when I saw it, I was ill the first time in the theater and I didn't rewatch it for a long time after that because I didn't take it in properly. And I thought it's the most him movie there has been. He went too far with it. Until I put it in context, I saw it again and I was like, oh, it's a magazine. I missed that the first time. I mean, like, I knew that it was, obviously, I'm not that stupid. It's from the inside, you know, the call is coming from inside the house. It's about this guy who makes the magazine, and it's kind of his life through the lens of seeing stories from the magazine. That's why it is meant to mimic the look of a magazine, that you could have images on a page with these articles, any and all sizes. That's why the aspect ratio changes so drastically from shot to shot. It could be in black and white and color from shot to shot, and I appreciated it all the more. I wish I hadn't been ill the day we decided to go, but we were on vacation and we had such a limited window of seeing the movie. Wes Anderson films are not shown in all theaters. There's a lot right now. It didn't get shown in our hometown.
Yeah, we had to travel a little bit.
Yeah, so, and is that because there's like, the Avengers are out right now, taking up 9 films in all theaters, and that theater you looked up is nothing but The Flash and The Batman? No, actually, those are already gone. Actually, I think some horror movies are taking the spots right now, but that's neither here nor there. I just like to debunk what the D-list media would have you know, and I'm talking about YouTubers and the normal media likes to say, too many comic book movies / comic book fatigue, keeping your indie movies out of your theaters? No, it's because the theaters like to make money. And they're not necessarily going to even put something on for one day or one screening, so you're going to have to go somewhere else. If you do happen to go somewhere else, support those theaters. There's a theater in Kentucky called the Kentucky Theater, and they don't have a lot of screens, but they play old films, they play indie films, they do play new films, like The French Dispatch and Asteroid City. It recently came out. They were both being played there. Not recently, of course, Asteroid City was played there. And that's where we saw it on the last showing, I think, in like the tri-state area. When I looked it up, the closest that wasn't the Kentucky Theater, I think, was like 150 miles away when I looked it up on Fandango. So I was like, well, we're not cussing doing that, or road trip. So, man, I wish I could remember what I was going to say, because I felt like it was kind of important. And then I got sidetracked, and then it just popped right out of my head, because I needed coffee. And I crammed hard for this too. You watch the films. I didn't really have time to do that over the past week. So I did a lot of scrounging around, watching bits and pieces of a lot of them, trying to refresh on that. There was something that I wanted to get to that correlated The French Dispatch with Asteroid City. and Gone Forever. Hopefully it comes back. Maybe I'll get to it when we do our picking apart Asteroid City. We're still going to do our basic review, and we're going to do a deep dive, something new for us, on a very specific topic. This being kind of a deep dive on Wes Anderson. This is our main podcast, the main show where we can get loose and talk about one big topic that when we talk about Asteroid City in our deep dive, it's going to be about just that and the larger implications of this crazy film.
What do you think, before our brains completely shut down?
Yeah. I do want to end with two of my favorite lines from his films that really stick with me. If I go back and if I were to watch all of them all in a row, I might come up with a lot more, but these are the ones that stick in my head. The last line of The Life Aquatic, which maybe summed up the film. If you didn't get it, it's Bill Murray saying, "This is an adventure." It's simple and it's to the point and maybe should have been at the top, but M. Gustav saying, "You see, there are still faint glimmers of civilization left in this barbaric slaughterhouse that was once known as humanity. Indeed, that's what we provide in our own modest, humble, insignificant..." Oh, cuss. And that, I feel, is what we are also doing with this podcast. If you've joined us today, I thank you.
And I'll end with saying, these might be movies not for everybody, but give them a shot. If you got younger kids, maybe start with Fantastic Mr. Fox. And if you're looking for other things outside your kids, maybe start with Royal Tenenbaums. But you can't go wrong with Life Aquatic or Grand Budapest. And with that, we'll end our episode. If you made it with us this far, thank you. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. We'll leave links to our social media below.
Chase Burdett, music, he played drums.
We'll leave links for him also. And until next time, farewell.